which isn't sponsored. There have been a lot of YouTubers out there doing them at the moment, but they are sponsored by Luminar, so I find they're not entirely honest, so this is an absolute honest review of how I found Luminar. Right, so here we are in Luminar. Now, I had a lot of trouble getting to this initial phase. My laptop kept crashing. I can't tell if it was Luminar or if it was my laptop, but I did go on the forums and there has been so many posts, I mean hundreds and hundreds of posts about Luminar 4 crashing. Some people can't even get it open. That was the issue I had. It just kept going to the catalogue and then just freezing and then closing down again, and it was going in that loop, which was really, really annoying. The way I fixed it though is if you go to your Finder, now if you find Pictures, which is under Users, you can go to Luminar 4 Catalogue, and in there is a file here called luminar4catalog.luminar. If you rename this file like that, so I've renamed it Catalogue E, then when you open Luminar, it won't be able to find this, and then it will reopen it fresh. It won't try and find a backup, it'll just open it fresh. So that worked with me. So if you're having troubles opening Luminar, definitely give that a go. Now, let's open Luminar. So here we have all my images in the folder I have selected. So if you select the image you want here and then go to Edit. So initially we'll come up with the essentials. So you've got the light, the enhanced, structure, colour, black and white, etc, etc. Or you've got all of the different looks down here that you can try. So that will automatically change the settings for you, much like an Instagram filter, just a lot better. But what I'm going to be doing today is focusing on the portrait and the creative aspects. So if we go into portrait first, now here is the skin enhancer. This is really, really cool. This would take me hours in Photoshop usually, but it does it with one click in here. So if we zoom right in, and I'll go to 100% just so you can see the difference. And there we are. If we go before and after, look at that. That's crazy. That would take me hours in Photoshop and it just does it in one click. I think it's a little bit too much. It's a little bit hazy. It's not that sharp, so I'm just going to take it down to halfway. And then you can also do shine removal as well. That won't do anything to this particular image just because the light is quite clean. There's a bit of line here, but other than that it's quite clean. So what the shine removal will do is it'll just even out the light for you. So once you're happy with that, you want to go to the portrait enhancer. Now this portrait enhancer, much like the skin enhancer, it only selects the face. It automatically knows where the face is in the image and it won't affect any of the background around it. Is really, really clever. So there's lots of different settings you can use here, like you can brighten up the face, red eye removal. The few I like the most is the eye enhancer. If we zoom in again, you can see the difference if I whack it up to 100%. The difference that makes is crazy. Obviously that's a bit too much, so again I'm going to go about halfway. And of course you've got the dark circles, slim face, which is really fun to play with, but I wouldn't personally use it. I think it's very untruthful. It's a bit dishonest for my liking, so I wouldn't use it, but it's good fun to play with. But enlarge eyes I really, really like. If you go to 100%, oh, that's funny. Obviously that's a bit too much. Let's come off that. So if we go for about halfway again, it just draws you into the image a little bit when the eyes are larger. Again, if you go before and after, once you get used to it, obviously, it does draw you into the image a bit more. So I like to use that a little bit. And then you can do things like improve the eyebrows, which basically darkens and minimalizes them. You can see here. I personally don't like that, but you might like that. And then of course you can change the lips, you can change the saturation, the redness, darkening, etc. There we are, so let's just whack these up to 100% just so you can see. So they're quite cool. They don't go with this image though, so I will not be using any of those. So that's one thing I really, really like about this software is, honestly, that would take me hours in Photoshop sometimes, especially when the face and the skin are so important and vital to the image. So that's really, really good. Also, how it detects the faces in the image is incredible, because in this image, for example, you can see here Adam is side on, but it still recognises him. When you darken the lips, for example, it still does it to him. It still knows it's a face, and it still softens the skin there as well, which is really, really good. So once you're happy with that, let's come out. And the next thing, which is even cooler, is the creative slider. Now, the thing that is the most popular about Luminar is the AI sky replacement, and rightly so. Honestly, it's so amazing. It completely outdoes the fact that it crashes a lot for me. It's something that I am more than happy to put up with for it. It's really, really cool. Again, I think it's more of a gimmick. I don't think you'd use it as a professional photographer for everything you use. It's more of a polisher. So for example, I would go into Photoshop, do all of the adjustments in there, and then I would finish off in Luminar by maybe adding a sky, doing the skin adjustments, etc. Not to say that Luminar isn't useful, of course, but I would use it more as a polisher than as an actual editing program. So if we go into sky replacement here, this is where you can change the background. Now, what the sky replacement does is it automatically detects the edge of your image and it makes a mask for you. To do this in Photoshop, especially with a hazy tree line and hair, would take me hours. Honestly, it could take me all day sometimes if I'm being really pernickety about it, where this does it automatically. So if we choose a random one, look at that. It's straight off the bat really, really good. Now, one thing I have noticed is that it doesn't fully render the photo when it's zoomed out this far. I've noticed, like if you zoom in, for example, now it's rendered, now it's sharp, whereas if you zoom out, the photo isn't very sharp. And I've noticed it happens with noise as well. For example, if you use a photo that has a lot of noise, so it's, you know, a high ISO, like Galaxy, for example, you see how much noise is in there. But if you zoom in, half of that goes. It renders, and you come out again, and you have to go back in again. So just something to consider. I did edit a photo yesterday, and there was no noise in it at all when I was looking at it like this. And then once I exported the JPEG and opened the JPEG, I saw that the masking was a bit off, and you know, sometimes it's not easy to tell. So it's just something to consider. Just make sure you zoom in to your images, just to make sure. There we are. See, the noise is really minimal now. So just something to think about. Obviously, this doesn't work with this image because it's completely off. However, you can relight the foreground using this slider, and it changes the tones in the shadows of your foreground to match the sky, so it makes it look more realistic. That's really, really cool. I really like that. That's very clever. I thought I would have to do that in Photoshop, to be honest, but it does it for you, so that's really cool. Another thing you can do is to load your own. So if you click Custom Sky Image, now I bought Luminar with a bundle, so I bought it with California sunsets and planets. Oh, it's taken a little while. This is another thing. Sometimes it just takes forever to load something really randomly, like a particular background, sky, or if you want to load in a custom image, sometimes it just takes a while. Alright, so here we go. So you have to find the folder that you've saved it in. So where did I save it? I would have saved it in stock images, California sunsets, and let's go for Bakersfield. See what that looks like. Might take a little while. It takes a bit longer when you're in any of these extra sunsets. I've noticed that there's quite a lot of noise in these as well. Again, if you zoom in, the noise does seem to dissipate slightly. There we are, it's a lot smoother. But when you zoom out, it looks really noisy for some reason. Again, don't think the image is 100% rendered when it's fully zoomed out. So again, something to consider. Right, I think that's lovely. Let's just have a go with a few more. See what the sunsets look like. Let's pick number 4. What's that? Oh, there we are, there's a little Easter egg for you. There's a helicopter in this sky. That's funny. I thought there was something wrong with the photo then. Yeah, not quite as good when you're doing portraits. It'd be fine if it's a cityscape, but slightly draws my attention a little bit. Let's come away from that. Let's go for a bright blue one. See, that's masked really well. I mean, it doesn't go with this image at all. But one thing I will say is it has very clearly, if I zoom in here, it has changed the highlights on her face. It's made them bluer to match the sky, which is really clever. I would have thought I'd have had to do that myself. So that's really interesting. And then obviously if you relight the scene, that'll exacerbate it. Yeah, how cool is that? Wow. Kudos. Well done, Luminar. That's really cool. Don't like blue though. Let's go for something else. Oh, that's nice. I really like that. Okay, cool. So if you go to advanced settings, you can fiddle around with it a bit more. You can make the sky slightly out of focus, which is always better when the foreground is in focus. Otherwise it just doesn't look real. So I'll just do it ever so slightly like that. And then once you're happy with that, you can go into Augmented Sky. So if you do graphic design, this is wicked. So you can go into Object Selection and you can place in different elements, like this. If you want to move them, just press Place Object, just move it about, press Place Object again, and it fixes it. And of course you can change the opacity with this slider. Obviously they wouldn't be in focus, so I'll bring it down. That's quite nice, doesn't really go though. Let's have a look. What's this? Where's he gone? Ah, he's behind her. Oh, there's a giraffe. There we go. Masking's a bit odd there, but you can just go in, you can go in here, edit mask, and you can just kind of change that a little bit just so it matches better. That's a bit odd, let's not do that. What should we go for? Let's go for a planet. Again, it's gone behind her, that's no problem. Let's just move that. Ooh. I like that. That's wicked. Let's pull that down a little bit. And go into advanced settings and you can just change the refinement or you can defocus it as well. Obviously I'll need to defocus this as it's in the background. It'll look a bit odd if it was in focus when they're in focus. Obviously it's very far away. So I'm just going to play with that until it's right. Now, obviously if the background here was in focus and it was sharp, then I can have the sky in focus as well. But as the background isn't, the sky needs to match, otherwise it's going to be clear that it's fake. As you can see here as well, it's not masking 100%. Let's have a look. Oh, no, actually, no, now I zoom in. Looks much better. Again, just not rendering properly when it's fully zoomed out, but that's not a problem at all. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's have a look. So you've got all these other sliders as well here. So you can do sun rays, make it a bit more dramatic. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, that's crazy. Don't like that. Let's try this. Oh gosh. It's quite nice there though. It's fine, you can just have a play around, see what works. You can end up with hundreds of looks. You can save your settings as well. So if I want to apply this look to all of these other ones, I just press Save New Look here. And then it saves all of the adjustments I've made, including the ones in the Portrait tab as well. And then I can just apply that to all of my other portraits, which is really cool. So for a graphic designer's point of view, I think this is really, really cool. You can add in so much stuff and it will save you so much time. As a photographer, I wouldn't necessarily use it for my main editing, as I've said before, but to add in those elements, it will make processing a lot quicker, which is really cool. So you've got all these other ones here as well. Let's try fog, see what that looks like. I assume it will be all over. Yes, yeah, all over. Okay, so that's quite good. But if you want any dense fog like I've put in here in Photoshop, you see this thin line, that wasn't actually in camera, I've put that in Photoshop. So you wouldn't obviously be able to do that with this, but that's quite cool if you want to match like that. That's quite cool. If you want it all over. I'm going to turn that off, so that's fine. And obviously you can play around with the grain. Not my cup of tea, might be yours, but not mine. Glow, what does this do? That's quite similar to Mystical as well, that's quite nice. Let's turn that off for now. Okie doke. So overall, I think the sky replacement is pretty good. It's pretty spot on. Sometimes you have to change the horizon slightly, and obviously some colours don't match, but obviously that's because of the image you were using. But there's so many you can choose from. I think they're all really, really good. I think there's a little bit too much noise in the Galaxy ones, and there's not a huge amount you can do about that. But again, that's fine. It is what it is. Loading custom sky images, that's really cool that you can load your own stuff in. Only qualm obviously about that is when you do load it, it doesn't kind of save it into here. You have to reload them every single time. So if you're going through lots and lots and lots of backgrounds, it can get a bit tiresome. But other than that, really happy. And the Augmented Sky things where you add in the planets and stuff, that's wicked. I absolutely love that. That's a really, really cool thing. Obviously, wouldn't use it on all of them. I think it's, again, a little bit of a fad, but I think it's really cool. You might not like it, I do. So yeah, no complaints really about that. So once you've done all of that, you can go onto the Pro tab. So that's when you can do all the more advanced things like dodge and burn. So that makes areas obviously lighter or darker. So if you go onto here, for example, and start painting, just so you're aware, the menu comes up here. I didn't realise that at first because I'm an idiot. So I was like painting, trying to work out what was going on. And obviously the menu's up here for that, just so you're aware. And you can obviously do the adjustable gradients, that's cool. The split toning is really cool. So if you come to here, the colour enhancer, so you can do your normal split toning, which is where it changes the hue colour of the highlights and the shadows. But if you come to colour enhancer, it does the same thing, but with the warm colours and the cool colours. So there's a lot of warmth in your photo. You can change the hue like this of all of the warm colours. It'll take a second. There we are. And then it will change the hue of the cooler colours. How cool is that? That's really cool. I could play around with that for ages. I love that, actually. I love that. I'm going to keep that like that. I don't usually do stuff like that, but that's really cool. In Photoshop, obviously, you could do that by changing quite a few different settings, but this does it all in one click, which is really cool. So once you're happy with your image, you need to export it. You can't just save it like you would in any other program. You have to actually physically export it, which is a little bit annoying, but it's not the end of the world. So you go to this little icon up here, export to image, rename it, very important, and then you click the folder. I've already been saving things to this folder, so it's automatically come up, but you'll need to choose the folder. It won't automatically choose the folder where your original photos come from, so you'll have to choose it, and then you press save, and then you wait, and you wait, and you wait. It takes a good 5 to 10 minutes to export an image once you've done a lot of stuff to it. I made a cup of tea and came back and it still hadn't exported. Again, not sure if that's my laptop. My Mac is 6 years old, which in Apple terms is a pensioner. So it could be the laptop or it could be Luminar. I think it may be a little bit of both by looking at forums. So that's just something to consider as well. It does take a long time to export any of your images. Whilst I was editing this, I realised that all of the photos I saved from that session all have a defect in, which didn't appear when I saved them. For example, if we go to this one, not only has it not masked properly here, but there's some weird shiny bits on her head. These are the main 4 offenders, but every single one of them had some sort of defect on. That wasn't obvious when I was editing them. None of this showed up before I exported the image. Absolutely none of this. This was all perfectly masked in Luminar, and now it's saved and suddenly it's not masked at all. So I've had to put all of these back into Photoshop and touch them up, which is a bit annoying because the whole point of Luminar for me personally was to edit everything in Photoshop and then bring it into Luminar to polish it off. But now I'd have to edit it in Photoshop, bring it into Luminar, and then go back into Photoshop again just to smooth out all of the edges. So that's really annoyed me. Also, these files are huge. They're about 20 megabytes each, which is probably why they took forever to export. Naturally, I saved it at 100% quality because when you do that in Photoshop, it's quite a small file, even when it's at 100%. So I did that in Luminar and it saved at about 20 megabytes. So that's probably why it took so long to export. But yeah, so not particularly happy with how these photos come out in the end. So this is what they look like after I've re-edited them in Photoshop. So now I've smoothed out the mask and I've smoothed out the forehead as well, which is much better. Now I've had to do that, I'm just really disappointed with how they came out. They didn't look like this before I exported them, and clearly they didn't compress properly. So I can't really recommend the software, to be honest. A bit of a letdown. I think it's amazing and it has potential, but personally, in my opinion, it's like a software that hasn't gone through a beta report. I think it was released way too early, and the fact that I've had to go back and redo all of this just says to me that it was released too early. If you've got any different comments, please do comment below, or if you agree, do let me know as well. Thank you, and I hope this video was helpful.